you listen to me?
Human rights lawyer Dele Farotimi arriving the magistrate court in Ekiti State for his bail hearing. He's been in prison in detention for the past 1 week. There are mixed reports from the court. They are saying that the magistrate struck off the assailants that came to defend him, saying that they cannot defend or practice in a magistrate court. There are also reports that new charges were thrown at him. They amended the charges to include treason. By the way, this is not yet verified. Also, there are reports that the magistrate remanded him in prison again for a further 10 days so as to decide his bail. A reminder of what is going on here. The charge for which human rights lawyer Dele Farotimi was brought to this magistrate court is no longer a criminal offense in Ekiti State. It ceased being a criminal offense since 2021. So one wonders what the magistrate is still waiting for to strike off the matter, because he shouldn't have entertained it in the first place. That's in a normal country where everything happens the way it's supposed to happen. The way it is written in the laws, all the procedures are supposed to be followed the same way. But is that the case in Nigeria? All Dele Farotimi wrote in his book is playing out in our own very eyes. It's like he is the main actor in the movie he wrote himself. They have proven that all he wrote in the book is correct. Also, this is despite the fact that they realized their error for charging him for an offense that no longer exists in Ekiti State. That's why they filed 12 new charges at the Federal High Court in Ekiti State, for which he was granted 50 million naira bail yesterday. So one can comfortably say that Dele Farotimi is being illegally detained. Because if they charge someone for something that doesn't exist, it's like trying to build something on nothing. Yes, Nigerians are with him, maybe in the spirit alone, because if they were with him physically, maybe this street would have been filled with hundreds of people protesting for his release. Maybe that would have forced the magistrate to release him today, because he's facing a non-existent charge. How illegal can a detention be? Are we in a military regime? It makes no sense continuing detaining someone despite the fact that your own people have accepted their mistake for charging him for something, a crime that no longer exists. That's why they filed fresh charges. This is very simple to understand, but common sense is no longer common in Nigeria. The worst part is that these people, all the powers they abuse, they never use it for the benefit of this country. They only use it to oppress people. They only use it to show, I'm in control. I can put you wherever I want. You can't do anything about it except you bow to my feet. Now, this brings us to the visit of Peter Obi in Ekiti State, where he visited Dele Farotimi in prison. He also visited Are Babalola at his university. The Punch is reporting that Peter Obi went there to beg him. Beg? Well, Peter Obi and his media crew have not released any statement concerning his visit to Ekiti State, and there's no way he will visit Dele Farotimi in prison without visiting Are Babalola. Yes, it makes sense that he will visit him, whether he's going there to plead on Dele's behalf or not, but as a show of respect to someone he knows, he will try to make a visit, whether it's passing by or maybe he called him that he was coming to Ekiti State. Whatever it is, the most important thing here is that the person involved stated it clearly that no one should plead on his behalf.
But yesterday, I got information that yet another principality is determined to use the powers of the Nigerian state and the Nigerian police, suborn their powers in pursuit of me. Let me be clear. If anybody should arrest me, let nobody beg for my freedom. Demand that they should take me to the court. Maybe they are the ones who are always saying go to court. I've always used the court as my instrument of battle. Even as much as I have continuously assailed that judiciary as an institution, it still remains the judiciary, and I will use it. But let nobody presume to plead with anybody on my behalf. I have lived my life up to this point, waiting for the consummation of this crystallization between myself and the system. I am here. I'm going nowhere. If anybody's going to run, now I go run. No, they run from now.
Dele Farotimi is up there with the likes of Gani Fawemi, Fela Anikulapo, and others. These are people who stood firm despite all the intimidation, despite death staring them in the face, but they still didn't flinch. These are people worth emulating. These are freedom fighters, the real freedom fighters, not people who are in power, abusing their powers, all because of what they steal. Because it doesn't make any sense that people are bothered about what people are talking about them. If you are doing all the right things, why would you bother? You wouldn't care. Clear conscience fears no accusation. But because they are doing all the wrong things, they are involved in corruption, they don't want people talking about it. And Nigerians haven't realized their powers. Yes, they don't know. These people are afraid of you, but you people have not been able to overcome that fear. The day Nigerians overcome that fear, everything will start working in Nigeria. Now, let's end with the explanation of human rights lawyer Henry Ugu on the civil defamation and criminal defamation, the rights of the federal government, what they can do and what they cannot do, the whole works. Let's take a listen.
I hear some people say Chief Afe Babalola lives in Ekiti State. Therefore, Dele Farotimi can be arraigned in Ekiti State. You know, it's defamation. He sold the book. He touches on all parts of the country. And I think it is important to clarify the civil defamation regime from the criminal defamation regime. When it comes to civil, you know, the venue of the court to approach could be, for instance, where the defendant resides, depending on the applicable civil procedure rules. But when you come into the criminal regime, it's an entirely different ballgame. Offenses, the venue to try offenses and the courts that have jurisdictions to try offenses is usually a function of where the acts of the crime were committed. That is to say, where the offense was committed. The venue of the court really has nothing to do with where the victim resides or where the complainant resides. For God's sake, a person, for instance, can be in London and his daughter will be raped, or can be in Jigawa and his daughter will be raped in Enugu. Does it therefore follow that because the father complained from Jigawa, then the court in Jigawa has jurisdiction to try the offense? It doesn't follow like that. It's usually a function of where the offense was committed. So, of course, Prof has already told us how defamation laws in Ekiti State do not even have criminal counterparts, that's the civil defamation laws. So, but for me, what's even deeper is the fact that Dele Farotimi made allegations about the corruption in the justice system. And he said that certain people in power, certain high caliber individuals, in quotes, use this system, manipulate this system for their own personal goals. The system is not fair. Lady Justicia is not blind. She brings down her blindfold to look at people's faces. That's the hub of what he's saying. And everything that is going on now is just proof of everything he had written. So you find, for instance, that supposing, for argument purposes, that that Lagos has jurisdiction to try a particular offense and Ekiti has jurisdiction to try the same offense. Let me give you a typical example. There's only one federal high court in Nigeria. So, but there's a federal high court in Jos, for instance, a particular court. There's a federal high court in Enugu, in Abuja, and the rest. But technically speaking, there's only one federal high court. But if a matter happens in Enugu, say PDP is having a crisis in Enugu, and somebody leaves Enugu and goes to Yobe State to go and activate the jurisdiction of the court, what it automatically flags is forum shopping. You're looking for a court that you feel is going to be predisposed or inclined to giving you a favorable judgment. So, of course, defamation, like Prof has said, let me just re-emphasize, has no basis in the criminal legislations in Ekiti State. Therefore, the criminal the charges that were brought pursuant to defamatory charges are illegal. But notwithstanding, the fact that somebody is already saying high-handed individuals manipulate the justice system, and what a particular high-handed individual thinks is apt in reaction to those allegations is to go and take the person from Lagos, transport him to Ekiti to go and try him. And I say this in view of the new allegations were seen about cyber crimes. On one hand, Supreme Court has reiterated time and again that arrest pending investigation is unlawful. So the ordinary course before you arrest the person is to first investigate him. And if they are now, prima facie case to found the arrest or probable cause to found the arrest, you can now arrest him. You don't arrest and begin to investigate in hindsight. You don't say somebody has committed defamation, you restrict his liberty. Then in hindsight, you say, oh, he may not have been defamation, now it's cyber crimes. And I make this point because it is beyond just Dele Farotimi. It's a function of the failure of the criminal justice system. The truth is, the police force really has no basis for continuing development, personal development, professional development, education. Like, it is just business as usual. The funny thing is, if you go to many places, an IPO more or less can see a matter that the facts speak to theft and can single-handedly, with paper and biro, transmogrify a matter from theft to armed robbery, and there are no consequences. So the force is unprofessional. There's so many lapses. Dele Farotimi's case is just in the radar now, emphasizing some of these things he's talked about. I'll just probably conclude by saying one thing. This thing also exposes a subtle flaw in our understanding of federalism in Nigeria. I'll say this, and lawyers can clarify, and perhaps it's probably going to be a bit controversial, but they could also educate me better, because we're all learning. Prof usually like to say that we're all learning, and if Prof is learning, then who are we not to learn? So, but the point I was going to make is, the way the federal system should work is that the center shares power with component units, and the legislative authority of the federal government in Nigeria is pursuant to the powers listed in the exclusive legislative list in the Constitution. Any power that is not listed in the exclusive legislative list in the Constitution does not inure in favor of the national government. On the other hand, there's the concurrent list, where we have shared powers between the federal government and the state government. In certain instances, the powers of the federal government override the powers of the state government, and you would talk about the whole doctrine of covering the field and all that. But I'm saying this for a particular reason. The federal government does not have the authority to criminalize, for instance, rape, or to criminalize theft. There's no general authority of the federal government to enact legislations of crimes per se. So what you find is, when the federal government has an authority to make legislation, say, regarding firearms and ammunition, and penalize them, it is pursuant to the powers of the federal government listed in the exclusive list to make legislations governing firearms and ammunition. The same with drugs, marijuana, the same with poisons. But there is no general authority to make criminal legislations in favor of the federal government, whether it's from the exclusive list or the concurrent list. And I hope that somebody can prove me wrong. And I'm saying this because I do not believe, and that's why I said this Dele Farotimi's case is just going to open so many layers of structural flaws in our system. I do not even believe that the federal government in the first place has the power, that's the National Assembly, to enact the Cyber Crimes Act. I'm saying that the Cyber Crimes Act is illegal because there is no place in the 68 items, or you may be following the alterations in the 66 items in the exclusive list or the concurrent list, that you can pinpoint a power of the National Assembly to criminalize cyber crimes in the country. It's ordinarily law that should inure to the preserve, the exclusive preserve of the states, like theft, like rape, and the rest. Dele Farotimi has said there's something unlawful, or there's some certain injustice that is going on with the structure of the justice system in the country. The way the system reacts to these very potent allegations is to now effect injustice on this same individual in a manner that the whole world can now watch and say, well, it looks like it's not just injustice, but it's flagrant injustice that doesn't even follow common sense.